Well, hello, my friends. Ruben Obed here. This is episode 23 and of the Ruben Obed Show. I'm doing it over here because I was talking and talking and talking, and my audio was off for some reason. I don't know why. But anyway, just to make a long story short, I believe that many of those shootings that are going on, they're all staged and they're fake and they're funded by people like George Soros and the Clintons and people of that nature. You got to understand one thing. I live in Puerto Rico. There's a lot of crime here. There's a lot of crime in Puerto Rico. How come we don't hear any mass shootings here in the schools? You know, there's guns everywhere here. But you know what? We don't have the narrative. See, because the Republicans here, it's not about eliminating gun laws here on the states. That's here in Puerto Rico. See, that narrative isn't here. But in the states, you got the David Hoggs of the society, and they have that narrative of relinquishing the guns, So they stage these mass shootings, They stage them. Why don't you hear these mass shootings in the ghetto in the states? How come you don't hear, I grew up in Camden, New Jersey, which is the ghetto. How come you don't hear that a guy rolled up in the ghetto with an AR-15? Because it doesn't happen, you see? Because if a shooting happens in the ghetto, nobody gives a damn, They don't give a damn. So they go to a white suburb neighborhood. Oh, yeah, because that's newsworthy. That's newsworthy. That's going to create ratings, And then you got like that guy and his wife who basically debunk all these fake staged incidents, and they treat them as if though they're crazy. Yet the guy was confronting a pastor recently about a shooting in a church. Where are the bodies? Nobody could prove it. The dude was running around talking about, I'll give $100,000 for somebody to bring me proof on the death of one of those people. Shit. If I had somebody gotten killed, and there's somebody telling me that it ain't true, of course I'll prove it to them to make them look like an ass. But no, because this is all staged, my people. You don't see these shootings in Puerto Rico. You don't see these shootings, these mass shootings in places that have a lot of crime. Go to Mexico. You don't hear about no high school or elementary school shooting. Why? Because they don't have the narrative. They don't have that narrative of take the guns away. It's not like that. So then they do that crap in the States. And you got the George Soroses and the Clintons of society and all these Illuminati Masonic demons, Tell me, how come in Puerto Rico we don't got mass shootings, yet we got crime coming out of the wazoo? Seriously. And let me tell you another thing. I know a lot of thugs here in Puerto Rico. When they buy guns in the black market, man, they get them on the street, and it's hard to come by. Sometimes they shoot each other out because of it, because they know that so-and-so has guns, and they battle it out, and they take the guns. That's how it happens. But you don't get a mass shooting in Puerto Rico. Why? Because the ones that are looking for guns, they're looking for guns because they sell drugs. And they ain't gonna mess up their business. They want to make money. That's what they're about. That's what thugs are about. They're about making money. They don't care about nothing. They ain't gonna go into an elementary school and shoot anybody up. Why? That don't generate money. That'd be stupid. But then like I said, here in Puerto Rico, there isn't that narrative because our political system here is different. Even though we're part of the United States, you don't hear people talking about gun laws here in Puerto Rico. Over here, the Republicans, all they talk about is statehood and not statehood. They don't even talk about abortion here. There is no Planned Parenthood over here, So we're part of the U.S., but it's like we're a totally different entity because things are different, But like I said, I grew up in the ghetto. Where are the shootings? I don't remember any kind of shit. I'm 40 years old, But then why did the shootings always have to occur in a white suburban neighborhood? Why? Because that creates ratings, and that pushes the narrative, and that brings out the David Hoggs of society, I want people to just keep this in mind. My heart goes out if there are any victims. If I am incorrect in my statements, I apologize, and my heart goes out to the families. But at this point, I believe all these things are staged, Right now, CNN, they showed David Hogg rehearsing his lines. Then he came out saying, oh, yeah, those were just sound clips and blah, blah, blah. Bull. You know, this is all a narrative. It's a false narrative. You know? So now I want you guys to ask yourself the questions. Why don't we see these mass shootings in the ghetto? Why don't we see these mass shootings in Mexico? Why don't we see this mass shootings here in Puerto Rico? We got so much crime here. Why? Because we don't have that take away the guns narrative. That's why. Because it's staged. Because if that narrative was here, then they would invest in creating a staged shooting here in Puerto Rico. But that's not the narrative here. You know what I'm saying? We don't, you know, Puerto Rico is different. But this is what I believe. You know, I mean, if somebody disagrees with me, well, sorry, you know, everybody's entitled to their opinion. But just bring that into perspective. Why do we not see these mass shootings in the most crime-stricken areas of the United States? I never heard of no guy show up with an AK-47 in Philly and come into a Philadelphia school and shoot up a whole bunch of Hispanics and black kids. I don't see that. I don't hear that. And if it ever did happen, it wouldn't even make news. Because nobody gives a damn about what happens in the ghetto, you know? But that's just how I think all of this is staged, you know? All of this, and you know, and a lot of conspiracy theorists are saying the same thing. These are all crisis actors, you know, and it's proven. It is proven. You know, these people are paid off to push this anti-gun agenda. You know, the guy that I was talking about earlier, he went to a church and he confronted this pastor. Supposedly it was 16 people who shot. And he said, I will give $100,000 to anybody who brings me proof about the death of any one of the people that supposedly was killed here. Nobody stepped up to the plate, you know. The lady, she goes up to the church and said, where are the bullet holes? No bullet holes. You know, this is all an agenda, man. This is all a narrative, you know. So I say this once again. How come, since if Puerto Rico, where I live, has so much drugs, because there's drugs here, and the drug dealers, they battle it out at the project and they kill each other. You hear murders here in Puerto Rico. You hear murders all the time. Not one school shooting. You got kids maybe fighting in school and videotaping it. Oh yeah, you got a lot of that. No school massacres, no school shootings. Why? Because we here don't have that anti-gun agenda. We don't. It's not part of our narrative here. It's just not part of it. Those aren't the things we deal with here. Over here, you don't hear the Republicans talk about taking guns rights away. You don't hear about, I mean, not the Republicans, I'm sorry. You don't hear the Democrats talking about taking the guns away. You don't hear the Democrats here talking about abortion, and, you know, you don't hear that. That's not really part of the narrative, because over here, basically the politics, it all boils down to just one simple thing. Statehood or not statehood. And it's go back and forth and whatever. You know, but that's why. You know, so go to Mexico. You ain't gonna hear one school shooting in Mexico. You got the MS-13 gangs, you got the cartels, and you hear about people getting killed. No school shootings in Mexico. You got bullies in Mexico. You got bullies in Puerto Rico. You got nerds in Mexico. You got nerds in Puerto Rico. You got nerds in the ghetto. And none of them show up with an AR-15 to shoot nobody. You know what I'm saying? But then you go to the white suburb neighborhoods. Oh, that's Sandy Hook and all them places. You know, I think all of this is staged. I really do. You know, from the looks of things, all this crap, all them shootings, is just to promote that freaking narrative. So just ask yourself the question, why don't we have mass shootings in Puerto Rico? Why don't we have them? We got crime. We got crime coming out of the wazoo in Puerto Rico, yet not one mass shooting in Puerto Rico. Or in Mexico, where you got MS-13 gangs. Or in Colombia, where you got the cartels. You don't hear about mass shooting, but then you hear it in a little suburb in Kansas and shit. You know, a little suburb somewhere with some white kid that shows up vested like a freaking G.I. Joe with an AR-15. Let me tell you something. I grew up in the ghetto. I grew up in Camden, New Jersey. You know, and A little kid, shit, we don't have, we won't, we didn't have enough for a goddamn quarter juice and for some donuts, let alone have money for an AR-15. Go to the ghetto. Ain't no kid got no money for no AR-15. It's not gonna happen, you know? Kids don't, it's purposeless. Why would a 15, 16-year-old go into school, elementary school, to shoot people up? It makes no reason. It makes no purpose. You know, there's no purpose to it. You know, right now, if you live in the ghetto, all right, people who lived in the ghetto, they know what I'm talking about. If you live in the ghetto and you got a wife and you live in a drug point, like let's say you got the drug dealer lives nearby, and you start fighting with your wife and you kick her ass and the police came, you know what you're doing? You're heating up his drug point. And the drug dealer gonna come to your house and they're gonna threaten you. They're gonna be like, if you bring the police up in here, if you start hitting your wife and you heat up our point, we're gonna kill your ass. That's how it rolls in the ghetto. You don't heat up the drug point. You know? People are scared of the ghetto. Let me tell you, ghetto is one of the safest places you could ever be. You know? Because the drug dealers, as long as you ain't got no problem, ain't no beef, you let them sell their drugs, they ain't gonna mess with you. On the contrary, if they know that somebody broke into your house and they stole and you're a decent person, the drug dealer will be like, don't worry about it. I'm gonna figure out who did it. They're gonna get their ass whooped. That's the law of the ghetto, you know. But you got these people talking about this false narrative, you know. I mean, they want to take away our guns in the States, you know. So you get people like George Soros, you get people like the Clintons, you get people like the Obamas, and I'm not saying them in particular. Because, you know, I know that they're, you know, I'm just talking people of that nature and of that caliber. You know, they're liars. All of them liars. James Comey, liars. You know, I mean, all them people are liars. So why am I, you know, I don't have to believe, you know, that these school shootings are real. Absolutely not. And the thing is, every time there's a shooting, there's always a whole bunch of conspiracy theorists saying, where's the proof? Where were the bodies? And it's funny because the bodies never show up. They don't show them, you know. When there was a massacre in Florida, in the club in Florida, that was real, man. You saw the bodies. There was an actual agenda. It was what? Muslim, Islam, you know, Allahu Akbar. There's a purpose to that. There's a purpose. But these shootings in the intermediate schools, and there is no purpose to that. It makes no sense whatsoever. The only purpose that I see behind it is what? The narrative. The narrative of taking away the guns. And that narrative, it's not here in Puerto Rico. They're not trying to take our guns here in Puerto Rico. Therefore, there ain't no school shootings. Nobody's going to stage a school shooting when there isn't a narrative. You know? But in the States, you got that narrative. You know? You have it. And that's part of the political spectrum, the whole gun or anti-gun agenda, you know. So, if you're offended that I say that this shit is staged, then I'm sorry. You know what I'm saying? And you know, it's my opinion. Everybody has their own opinion. This is my opinion. You know what I mean? But I just want you to keep in mind that why don't these shootings happen in the ghettos? Why doesn't a mass shooter go into the ghetto, to the hood, high school or intermediate school? How come it happens in the suburb? How come in places like Puerto Rico, who have a lot of crime, places like Colombia, who have a lot of crime and a lot of drugs, and a lot of people, places like Mexico, who have a lot of crime and a lot of drugs, no mass shootings in those places in the schools? Why? Because it's purposeless. Because the people who shoot up, you know, who are in cartels, they're making money. They ain't got time to go into an elementary school to shoot up some innocent kids. There's no purpose to it. You know? There is no purpose to it. You know? So, that's my point, people. That's my point. You know? Why doesn't it happen in the ghettos? How come I don't hear about, oh yeah, your elementary school in Philly or in Camden got shot up? No, because the news doesn't give a damn if there's a shootout in the ghetto. They don't care. It doesn't fulfill their narrative. Now, you go into the suburbs, you got these white kids, you know what I'm saying? Then it's newsworthy. Why? Because it's scandalous. You know? Oh, it happened in a white suburban neighborhood. You know? So that's the perfect place to stage it, so that they can get the news coverage out there, you know, and it brings ratings, and then boom, you put out a David Hogg with his false little narrative, and they pay everybody off. So all I gotta say is this: I live in a place full of crime, and there ain't no mass shootings here. So that's all I gotta say, my people. Food for thought, Ruben Obed. Hope you liked my video, episode 23 of the Ruben Obed Show.